internet problems. I asked you, do you reflect on the day that's just passed at the end of the day, sort of everyday thing?
Yes. Yes, I do. Often, whether I write it down in my notebook or I write it down in Scrivener in my digital notebook, reflect on what happened, just kind of how I'm feeling. And I think of it like I'm creating a log for me to go back and look at one day. So it's can be quite rough, but kind of key highlights. Am I working towards what I need to be doing? How am I feeling? Just kind of get it down. And then once it's down, then it's like it's done. I've kind of extracted it, and I can go to sleep. But yeah, I'd like to hear your approach to that.
So I have a 5-year diary that I really enjoy writing, and so it's a journal. It's a little book that I've got here, and basically each page has 5. I can open it up to a blank one. So each page has 5 years, 5 sections, and then you can just start on whatever year you start on. So if you start 2022, the year is blank, so you can just write that, and then you write down, your journal entry for that day. And then you just keep using this one journal for 5 years. So then next year, when I come back to, today, but next year, I can see how I was thinking, what was going on in my life. It's not really a Dear Diary kind of thing. I'm not using that for that kind of purposes, but more like, I guess how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what's keeping me busy, is something like painful, if I have like a painful tooth or something, like I can write that down, and then so when I come back to it next year, I can be like, oh yeah, that pain went away, or oh my god, that pain is a lot worse now, or whatever. But I really like this idea of sort of one diary spanning multiple years, because I think it's going to bring a lot of joy to me in 3 years' time, when I can look back and remember exactly what I did 3 years ago.
Yeah, I could see how that would be nice. I think I'm not organised enough to do that. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm just looking through mine, and it's such a hodgepodge. I mean, it's a journal of everything. I've got here 23rd of July, 2022. Rain has cleared.
Is that it? Full stop.
There's more, but like that's my opening.
That's fine, man.
Because we've had like torrential storm weather here, depressingly wet, rain getting into every pore, every crevice of the house, and just non-stop. And none of the houses are really built. All of the streets are like quite steep, and everything just kind of flows and floods, and it's all sort of icky. But yeah, it's cleared, and yesterday was beautiful, and so I went out for a walk, and I saw my old friend. I hadn't seen him for ages, and we went and had a catch up and had a Vietnamese coffee in the old food court, and I just had a catch up like the old days, because he's one of my friends from sort of the before years. So it was nice. It was like a pleasant, nostalgic moment with somebody from my old life, and then we sort of went our own ways, and then I just wandered around, kind of no real purpose, just sort of the flaneur, just sort of wandering around the street as everyone emerged from their hovels to enjoy the sun. It really is like that, man, in the city. Everyone just sort of coops up.
Hibernating.
Yeah, it is, man. Hibernation at this time. And so that's cool, and reflecting on that. And but then at other times, I'm writing down pieces of knowledge, because I find if I write things down, I can read the Wikipedia article like 5 times. Like there's words that I still don't understand what they mean, and I've looked them up so many times. I'm a bit of an idiot like that. Like I have to write it down for it to actually stick.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is like, everyone knows this, right? But no one really acts upon it. But just my study of different things. I go and write it down, and it sort of embeds itself the act of writing makes it real.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that a lot, and I understand that a lot. I'm not very good at just consuming video or consuming some text and then remembering it. I do really have to write it down. But you said something really interesting there, the before years. What are we talking about before? Is it before COVID or before what?
So I believe I have entered into a new phase of my life and over the last couple of years. It's like a transitional period. And the before years were after childhood, but before adulthood. It was kind of young adult, fresh world is this big place where everything can happen. Still a sense of naivety, country boy exploring the world, but with the tools and the I guess resources of a fully mature adult, but with the without the maturity, and so and I mean that's just what happens. You go to university, you start traveling, you go to places, and it's like the seedling of yourself. And so this friend is a good old friend from university, and we used to just go and have good times together, and I knew he was in Japan with me as well. And I remember one time, we went on this trip to Kansai, we went to Osaka, and it was just like we stayed in, near the zoo somewhere in Osaka. It's like quite a rough area. I can't quite remember now what the name of the station was, but it's like literally we saw it was like the Yamaguchi Gumi had their little the Yakuza headquarters was like right across the road. There was like deals going down in the cheap hostel we were living in, and it was like this cinder block concrete, 500 yen per night kind of a thing. And we were staying there. We were sharing a toothbrush. We had nothing. We had no money, and just stupid, young and stupid, and we had so much fun. And we took, we went out to Kobe the next night and just wandering around, and we were like just in awe of the people, causing a racket, a commotion, and it's just that kind of youthful fun, which I often read about. I find it in a lot of Mishima novels. He's got this kind of young, kind of youthful essence that it comes across in the characters, and I really like that. It's endearing. Yeah.
So those are your formative years, do you think? Are those the years that sort of form who you are?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the seed of who you become. But I've written a lot about it. Like I've got this story. I think. I can't remember what my own story is called, but it was the one with the bottle in Kyoto.
Yeah.
So it tastes like summer, I think. I'm really
flavor of something, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm really bad with this, but like my own story. But like,
I can see that bottle in my mind. I've seen the illustration.
So it's my own. It was my real experience of going to Kyoto, actually, with this guy and another guy. And we were just young idiots, really. But, because everyone goes to Kyoto and they're like, we're going to go to the temples, kill Mizutera, all of that stuff. But we ended up literally just getting stuck in a cafe talking shit for like the whole time. We didn't, we might as well have just stayed in Tokyo. Like, we didn't see any temples. And then we were just hooning around in the hot sun, like the Kyoto sun in the summertime, and it was just bleating hot, and we were melting. We had I remember we were like crawling to get to the vending machine to get some water because we were just melting, kind of pre-heat stroke kind of a thing. And it was just the best time ever, and and then we went back and it was like, we're going to do this again sometime, but we never did. which is...
You're always hoping for the next time, but then, you never realize that was the last time that you did something. I heard Sam Harris talk about this the other day, actually. It's really interesting. He was like, whenever you do something, notice and realize and be aware of the fact that this could be the very last time you ever do it. And, he used the example of skiing. Like, he used to ski a lot, and then he would go every year skiing. And then one year he went home after the skiing trip, and he didn't think to himself that this was the last time. There was no ceremony or anything like that. And then he just never went skiing ever again. And he said, I'll probably never go again. And I think that's quite a powerful thought. Is what I'm doing the last time that I'm going to do this? Is this the last time that I'm going to do this? It's quite powerful.
Yes. No, I agree. And do you know why? What? Just curious, why he stopped skiing?
I think there was some accident. I think he had an accident or something, and then so he took a year off or something like that, and then just never went back to it.
So I found it. So I'm going back. So this is DERIVE Wander Magazine 8. So it's a glass bottle of memories. My own story. I finally remembered the name. But actually, I've looked it up here. But let me just read this. So it was my first time in Kyoto. The trip unfolded over a long weekend in a fit of youth that, looking back now, seemed particularly nostalgic. Me and S were both still in university and were just about to start the new semester after summer break, and N was already out of school and working. We had convened just the day before to make a plan, and before I knew it, we were on the bullet train bound for Kyoto. We spent the entire ride laughing and causing a nuisance of ourselves. N brought this cheap plastic umbrella with him, even though we were forecast for nothing but perfect weather, and S would not let him forget about it. Looks like a bit of rain is coming, S kept saying, with a serious expression as we passed by the lush fields and perfect blue sky. We arrived in the old town of Kyoto, not knowing a soul. We decided to ditch all the temples and tours, and one of us had the bright idea to just walk around until we found something interesting. It seems pretty silly now, but we just started wandering around with no real goal in mind. We went down side streets and through quaint neighborhoods, skylarking and roaming in search of a bit of fun. We followed the grid of streets and covered quite a bit of ground while sharing lewd stories and jokes that I cannot write down here, but that kept us in stitches. As we walked, it was fascinating to see the old houses and the tiny alleyways that made up the place. There was occasionally local people out and about, but for the most part the streets were deserted. As we got further and further from the centre of the city, the town lost a bit of the glitz it put on for the tourists and started to show its true self. There was a big construction yard where the rows of houses had been completely knocked down to make way for some tenement blocks. Past that, there were tiled-roofed tea houses and residences, old workshops and other historic buildings all boarded up on the edge of the new developments and left to rot in the summer heat. The sun beat down and the humidity caught up to us as we began to get a bit weary. The stinking asphalt and endless concrete was unrelenting, and I was beginning to wish we had just taken the subway somewhere. Only the odd tree gave shade in the high noon. We found a small canal under a bit of cover between two roads and took our shoes off and dipped our feet in the water to cool off. What are we even doing out here? Whose idea was it to walk? N asked. I wished it would rain and cool us down a bit, S sniggered, and we all laughed. I appreciated the slight breeze that came up the canal, and the gentle flow of the water, which was surprisingly clear. We are pretty far away from the middle of town now. Maybe we should head back the way we came, N suggested. I want to grab a drink from somewhere though, S said. I knew we should have grabbed something back there. I haven't seen any vending machines or convenience stores since we left the station, I said. I just want to get out of the heat, Ian added, as he laid back on the bank of the canal. If we can find the river, then we can follow that back, southward at least. We left the canal and tried to find our way to the river. We lost our way for a while, but at some point we found it again. I cannot even remember what part of town it was now, but I could see out across the water, and there looked like there were a few shops up on the other side and a bus stop. Why don't we check out over there, I said. The other two looked ready to go up, but I thought it was worth a shot. There is a bus stop. We can take it back instead of walking. We crossed over the bridge and wandered up the hill a little while. There was a bit more shade under the trees and a line of old stores on the shopping street. The place was worn down, there was no doubt about that, and there were no signs of life. I looked closely at the timetable at the bus stop and tried to decipher it. Look, we can catch the bus back from here. Next one is in an hour. Some old music piped out from hidden speakers in the nest of power lines that crisscrossed overhead. The shops all seemed open, but it was like nobody was home. Outside one of the stores was a rusted drink fridge. It was one of the old-style units that lay flat and had a bottle cap opener on the front. I was quite parched now too, and I rattled it to see if there was anything inside, but it was empty and unplugged. Outside the next old building, there was a sandwich board for a small coffee house. I slid open the door carefully and looked inside. In bumped into me, and the three of us burst inside rather ungracefully. "Welcome," came a voice from somewhere. I made out the figure of the coffee house owner as my eyes adjusted to the dim, cavernous light. It was a musky old joint and was completely empty, except for a blanched elderly woman who I guessed was the owner's mother. She gave us the stink eye from her rattan chair in the corner. We sat down, exhausted. At least the heat had not seeped in here yet, I thought. The owner came over to us. "It's quite hot, isn't it? Are you visiting?" he asked curiously. "Yes, we have actually just walked here from the station," I said. That's quite a far way to walk in this heat. "What can I get for you?" he asked us, fishing for the notepad from his apron. "What I could really do with is a cold drink. Do you have any soda?" S asked. "May I recommend our special soda?" the owner replied. I looked at the other two. "Shall we try it? Who knows when we will be back here again." "Okay then, let's get 3 of those," S said to him. "Would you like ice?" "Yes, please." The owner disappeared and came back out with 3 sets of bottles, glasses and straws on a tray. He laid the bottles down on the table. I was surprised that they were made of glass, as everything was plastic these days. "They are twist tops," the owner said as he left us to it. The soda was an orange colour and I did not recognise the brand. The bubbles fizzed up from the bottom and I poured S and N their drinks and took a sip of my own. It was remarkably good and refreshing. I had actually never tasted anything like it before. I zoned out for a while and looked out the window at the street outside. The branches of the trees gently swayed in the breeze that came up the way. Back down towards the bridge, I could see the outline of the city under slow, drifting clouds. The piers, temple towers and old houses, along with the new apartment blocks being built right over each other, all seemed so calm underneath the bright blue sky. The moment left quite an impression upon me. It was an idyllic feeling, filled with youthful notions and aimless freedom. There was nothing holding us down, and we were all unformed and untamed in a way. The back streets of this strange city created a kind of feeling of motion, of vitality, that I did not really understand at the time. I have let those halcyon memories simmer for a long time. Looking back, my tendency for the affliction of nostalgia has not waned. Instead, it has only grown deeper with time. Eventually, we got up to leave. I chatted with the owner very briefly and mentioned we were just in Kyoto for the weekend. He asked me if we wanted to keep the soda bottles as a memory of our trip. I regret it now, but I remember thinking we did not want to be carrying around anything extra, and so I declined. Somehow, we caught the right bus and found our way back to the cheap hostel where we were supposed to be staying that afternoon. We laughed and we danced into the night and seemed to make a bunch of new friends there. But I will always remember the moment up on the hill in that coffee house. It was the last time the three of us were all together properly, just watching the clouds pass by. It's funny how things like that happen, how people come and go in your life. N stayed on in Japan for a while. S went back home, and I am not quite sure what happened there. I've tried looking for that same soda drink again in other places, but I can't for the life of me, find it anywhere.
That's so lovely, man. And when I'm listening to you talk, when I listen to you read that story, I just think it's such an innocent story. It's just you seem to be really inspired by that feeling of like innocence and youth, and you write a lot about it in the book as well that you sent to me. And it really seems to me that you are very fascinated and inspired and interested in this idea of youth, innocence, youth, sort of simple. I like it.
Thank
really
you.
Beautiful, man.
No, sorry. I just indulged there for a moment. I haven't read that story for a little while, so I think that's a couple of years old now. That story that predates a lot of our recent collaborations, but that just sort of came out of somewhere. I think it was as I was trying to reconcile coming back to New Zealand and kind of reflecting on the life I had, and that memory. So that Kyoto story would have been, say, a 2013, 2012, maybe some it's sort of a 10-year-old story in real life, and because it is based on my own experience, but it was from the very beginning of a period of time which ended sort of as I came back to New Zealand. So that period of time is kind of quite contiguous, and everything in it is very fascinating and nostalgic for me now, because it's kind of there is a start date and an end date that I can associate with that. And so coming back to I think how we got to this topic, which was I feel like that period has kind of finished or concluded, and so I've moved into a new period, which is marked by different aspects. Which one day I think I'll look back on this period and be like, well, there was great things about that as well. That's exactly what we talked about last time, right? Like you're always nostalgic for the time just before. Yes.
And earlier you said the term the before years, but that could just be like 2 years ago. And those are the before years, or 10 years ago. Yeah.
Well, I think these before years are this kind of the Japan era, and looking back, if I was to go back, it wouldn't be the same as this, and that's kind of when the nostalgia really hits you, is when you see somebody from those old days, because the person in this story, N, is actually the friend that I met yesterday. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's like we completed the loop, but all three of us never got back together again, and I don't know if we ever will, but I'm able to sort of meet with these people individually, but that vitality of life just doesn't quite seem to be the same, and I try to make up for it on my end by being super double Genki, but it's just not the same, and everyone sort of slowly gets worn down, and you see these people you knew that you were in love with or whatnot, and it's like it's almost a regret to see them. It's like better to let the memory just sit there sometimes. I don't know. In its like plastic wrapping, like a comic book that is in a mint condition. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, that's the way of looking at it. Like, because I sometimes see people when I'm walking around, because I was in this city 10 years ago in Wellington, and I see friends or people, and I'm like, okay, I know that person, but they're not the same. They're not. We're just strangers now. Whereas maybe I used to come to your house. We used to watch movies like we were lovers or something, and it's like I don't know you anymore, and that's kind of in one way really liberating, because you can just reset and kind of start again. But at the same time, it's also a bit sad that you had that and it's gone, and it's never going to come back.
I've had quite a lot of these friendships in my life, like these kind of very fleeting friendships where I get really close to people for 1 or 2 years, and then, you know, it always happens when you live outside of your country, because you're living in a foreign place, so everyone there is also, or all of the foreigners that you meet are also living in a foreign place, so they eventually want to go back home, or they eventually want to go to another country. So all these friendships, these solid friendships that you make, they eventually end, right? One of you is going to leave at some point, and it's really sad. And sort of now I look back upon those friendships, and I wish that I'd made more of an effort to keep in contact and keep seeing these people. But of course it's easier said than done, and you know, you try to message each other for a while, and it just, man, like, you know, long distance relationships are hard enough. Long distance friendships are just like mental, you know. I mean, it's really hard to keep that flame alive.
That said, though, as a concept, though, so I'm not on Facebook, as you know. I'm not really a social media guy big time, but I think there's something beautiful about putting things down and coming back to them at a later date. So, like, because there are people, you know, and you meet a lot of people when you're on the road, but there's some people who stay, you know, you've got them in your mind, and then something happens and you just bump into them again, and then you can kind of just pick it up, almost just press the play button again, like, you know what I mean? And I believe that's a lens of looking at it, you know, and it's like, oh, maybe I'll never see you again, but actually maybe I will. You know, when I'm in Japan again, I'll be like, man, just turn up and just like let yourself in. And that in Japan, that's not really appropriate to just do that, but just do it anyway, you know, like, I know where these people live. I know where they work. I'm just going to turn up, you know, and just get rid of the formality. And I think that's something that you can bring, and it's forgivable to just get rid of the formality and be like, oh, can I book you in? It's like, no, fuck off. I'm coming to your house now and I am staying there for a week, and we are going to do these things that we haven't done for 5 years. You know what I mean? And some people are just like, they don't react well to that, but like that's like, why else would we even live if we cannot do that, you know? And what other work or commitments can we, you know, abscond from to go and run around in the hills, you know? Like that's like, let's find an excuse. Let's find something that we can, you know, saboru, you know, to sabotage and get away from. And I think that's when you know that you've grown up too much, like, where you're like, oh, you know, I've got all this stuff I need to do, but actually I do need to do it. I'm sorry. Like, that's too far, right? You always got to be like, yeah, fuck it. Like, we'll do that next week. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, you got to be able to pack everything in a bag and just, you know, get out for a week or two.
Yeah, when the heat is on, man, when the heat is on, you got to be able to get out in 30 seconds. No, but like that. I mean, and for me, that's like the essence of youth, right? Is like you're not anchored in. It's not like, well, I've got to organize this and that's. Like, no, like I'm here. I'm on your doorstep, and we're in a society as well where that's not really like that community aspect of that. Like, hey, you know, I've just turned up. Like, well, that's not a thing that people do anymore. It's like it kind of has to be planned, and you know, it has to be organized and all ready to go, and it's just like perfect little moment. But it doesn't reflect the reality that you can actually be in a tough spot, and you know, I haven't got money for a hotel, man. Like, I need somewhere to stay. Can I sleep on your couch? Like, that's youth, you know. And but as you get older, it's like, well, actually, you know, I have the money to go and get a hotel, you know, get a rental car. Oh, you know, it's all like nice, and I appreciate that, man. I like a bed. A bed is a good place to sleep, but I've also slept on floors and couches and anywhere else, and that the cheap Osaka hostel with the cinder blocks and the prison showers and the Yamaguchi Gumi across the road, like that's also like acceptable, and the minor inconveniences of living right next to being right next to the highway and bed bugs and all of that it doesn't matter,
Just get over that. But did you ever hear about the website couchsurfing.com?
Yes.
You know this one? Yeah.
I never used it, but I am aware of it. Yeah.
I'm exactly like you. Like I've never used it, but it's always been. Can't really do it anymore for the reasons that we're talking about here. But when I was younger, when I was about 23, I was always so fascinated by this idea of just like hopping through Europe and staying on people's couches, like strangers' couches. And I built my own profile, and I was sort of gearing up to get started and start reaching out to people and plan a journey. But I don't know, something happens, something or other. But yeah, I mean, I just love that sort of idea of that freedom. Just like taking a bag across Europe, or like cycling. Maybe I should do it on a bike. Would be nice, like cycle from here to there, and then stay on someone's couch, and then they can explore the area with you, or tell you what's what. I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. So it's all connected. Last night, so my I guess primary source of just visual. How do I even explain this? Like, what is happening around me? Primarily, anything, just visually, socially, what people are trying to do. It comes through Instagram, right? I love it because it's visual. It's just images and things. And I was following this girl who I think I know. We have a friend in common or something like that. And I was just I just happened to scroll through and see the story, and she's doing like the van life. Have you seen that? And I actually got really engrossed in her story, and I know that sounds a bit voyeuristic, and I am actually a voyeur, if you didn't know, but like I actually got really invested in her story because she gave up her work and her job to buy this van and to travel around the South Island of New Zealand, which is, kind of the rugged countryside. North Island's a little bit more tame, but South Island's like the Southern Alps and stuff. And I was like, man, this is interesting. And she's like blogging her like life journey and her sort of her self-discovery. And I was like, man, this is, wow, this is the good stuff, But it was mediated through this platform, right? Like for me, I have to go and write these like stories and like pull it out of the memory hole because there was no documentation, at the time. It was, I took some photos, but it wasn't being live streamed or anything. But this search for authenticity that I see from people, just a little bit younger than me, or same age even, or older, but a lot of like people kind of coming up into this, and they're trying to find themselves in the world. And I found it really interesting to just see that like played out in this. And I feel like I can still interface with this. Like maybe older people wouldn't, or people who don't want to see it can't see it. But I feel like I can see what they're doing. It's just like self-authoring kind of life journaling, but through this visual platform. You know what I mean? Like, it's like she's sharing screenshots of like her diary of her journeys and stuff. And I was like, man, this is so interesting because it's pretty much like the real-time version of what I've been writing about, and in a way there's a certain sadness to that because it's not within the moment, like I wasn't, when I was wandering around Kyoto like an idiot with my friends in the summer heat, we weren't like, man, this is a beautiful authentic moment. It just was, and
I understand what you mean.
You know exactly what I mean. But there's a certain sadness, and I look at this girl and there's something beautifully melancholic about it, but it was like, man, you're you're documenting in the third person, like what should be in the first person, and and as maybe that's just the way people operate now, younger people, but I don't know, man. It's both. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, do you think her experience is very different to what your experience would be in that situation? Because she's, I mean, I don't know. I don't know her or her Instagram at all, but maybe if she's thinking a bit too much about creating content, she's not actually living through the experience itself. And we talked about this recently, but like, when you just get so caught up with hashtags and stuff like that, then you cannot just experience the moment for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the big difference. Like so if I throw my mind back, which is always, I'm actually quite a bad unreliable narrator. Like I think I conflate things that happened at different periods together and stuff. But like generally, if I throw my mind back, social media was, Facebook and that messaging was like a thing, but definitely like Instagramming, live streaming, that wasn't a thing when I was, in these formative years. And my approach was more like the Mishima Yukio kind of, like that was where I took my inspiration from, which was like having nothing on you. Maybe having a diary to write it down, but like the MVP, like what do you need? And that sort of youthful approach where you have no money, you have nothing, you've got just the bare bones, but from that your soul kind of fills the first person, like you're there, there's nothing kind of in between. And I don't know if that makes sense, but like we just wandered and laughed and just acted, and you do see that. I think young people everywhere throughout all history have been like that, but the added function of having to live stream it and justify it and mediate it, I think, can take away from that. And it's as if the experience isn't complete without that cherry on the top.
Yeah. They need that Instagram sort of recognition to make them feel like what they're doing is right, possibly.
And I actually feel the opposite, because I'm like, oh man, I don't really want to wreck this moment by just having to do that. Like it's like a task. Oh man, I got to share what I'm doing. But and I'm slowly coming around to the idea that I need to tell people more about what I'm doing, what we're doing and stuff. Like I tend to wait until I've got this, like, I've created a photo book, it's like, here it is. Like, but people do want to know more about the story behind it and what goes into it and that authenticity. And that's where I think there's a cultural change where people are starting to talk about that in the first person. Like they're talking about what they're doing real time. And I'm still not fully on board with that, like how to do that in a way that is congruent with reality and who I am, like without presenting myself and say, well, this is who I am, and that's actually not. Yeah.
There's a new app on the block, and I was just trying to remember the name of it, but I cannot remember the name. I think it's becoming quite popular. I have not used it, but I've heard of people who do use it. It's basically this app that on paper is supposed to stop what we're talking about here, like this kind of like over obsession with posting your life and like really like scripting your life and making it look perfect. And so this app, basically what it does is at a random interval throughout the day, it will ping you an alert on your phone, and you have to take a picture at that moment of what you're doing. And so you take a picture with the back camera on your iPhone, so whatever you're looking at, whatever you're doing, whatever you're engaging in, and then you also have to take a selfie at the same time to prove that what you're doing is right? So it's like double checking. And I think the creators of the app are sort of trying to stop all this kind of over obsession with, with what we're talking about here. But I don't know. I think that doesn't really solve a problem. It's just another app that people are going to use, right? It's just another one on top of the cake.
Yeah, man. It's it is a problem, and I always come. I mean, this is a common perennial issue, but because there's years there, and in fact, potentially this period in Kyoto was one of these years when I didn't even have a proper phone. I was using like one of those old flip top, because I made a decision at the time, which was proved to be the right decision. Was I don't want to be connected. And so I literally, the MVP, I needed to have a phone for bank accounts and stuff. So I had to be able to receive and send text messages and calls. But any additional functionality was surplus to requirement. And I had this old flip-top red phone with and you have like the little fob hanging off it, like the Japanese high school kids back in the day. And that was it. That was my phone. And it was like the beast. And actually, I think it had a TV on it. It was like one of those like gutter gay, old school phones. But like that was it, and I don't recall missing out on anything because of that. And if anything, it was an opportunity to kind of explore my roots a bit more. I remember I think I had phone numbers. I had to draw maps and stuff in my diary. Like, I was like, okay, how do we get to the station? I had to map it out and then go and remember. And so I was a lot more cognizant of where I was going. I'm just trying to remember, like, there was a couple of situations where I was like, man, I think I had a job interview or something and I couldn't even find the place, and the guy was ringing me up and I was like, let's just reschedule. Sorry, man, I was trying to make some bullshit up, and then he's like, oh no, I'll wait for you, and I was like, oh man, like I haven't got a map. Like, I don't know where you are, and it was so awkward. But I mean, that was one of like the only negative, that like the one time it didn't help. But every other time, I had a map, how to get somewhere, or and it was like thinking in terms of lefts and rights, like, because Japanese streets are all like topsy-turvy, so it's like, okay, just go left 3 times, right 3 times, and then you're at the location. And it was like everything became this little journey, and it was real artisanal. And I actually want to get my old moleskin from the day, because I've still got it in a box in Japan, and it has like all of the stuff. And then you get the little like business cards and tickets and stuff, and it was all sort of pasted into my notebook, and it was like bulging, because these things have you can kind of see that this one's like new, but they have like an elastic, but the one I had was like bulging with all this stuff that I'd collected along the way. And I was like, man, this is cool, like this is real. And if I get stuck, then I'm only able to sort it out myself. I can't call in any help. There's no Uber, there was no reason to have a phone. Even the map wasn't really required. And it felt so much more real. And then I tell people, like, oh man, isn't it going to be inconvenient? And I was like, well, actually, no, I like the inconvenience of not having to do that. It was like an artisanal approach. Yeah.
That moleskin sounds like your own little personal archive. Yes. Sort of like you collecting all of this ephemera on the journey of your life. And I imagine it probably had like train tickets and sort of bus tickets and stuff like that. Yeah, especially
from those early days when we were just like, man, let's just go, and I mean, I really look forward to actually getting my hands on it again. It's been years since I looked through it, but
it had get it out, man.
Sorry,
you should get it out.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of boxes of stuff in Japan still that I need to send over. I kind of need to organize it myself, because they're quite heavy, so I need to send it over on a boat or something. But I'll do that next time I'm there. But yeah, man, it's nostalgia, and I sometimes think like I had some ideas, and I'm kind of ready to execute these actually. Like, do I because I got this. Got the old phone. Do I just keep it at the office? Like, am I? It's like office hours. It's there. And I mean, I'm ready to do that. Like, I think that could actually be a nice little thing to do. You know, is just keep it here plugged in, and people can ring me when I'm here. But if I'm not here, I'm gone. You know, sorry. And being being unforgiving as well. Like yeah, I'm gone. Sorry, I'm not available. Like I think people are too. Oh man, it's judgmental. You know, you can be too available. So yeah, I know you go AWOL sometimes.
Yeah, I do. I love going AWOL, but then I have massive guilt afterwards. Like so when I was in Japan, I was really AWOL, and then I can just go for days like without. But the trouble is I just get overwhelmed with. I really easily get very overwhelmed with people waiting for me to reply to their messages. And so what happens is that there'll be a few people who've messaged me and I won't reply to them, and then more people message me, and then it just adds up, and then I really get very overwhelmed with it, and I have to actually put it in my to-do list. And it sounds really crazy, it sounds mad, but I have to put something in my to-do list to say, like, clear the cache of people who are waiting for you to reply to messages. And I think it's actually quite a negative thing. This is mad. Like, I should be able to just like not worry about this, but I can't.
Interesting you mentioned that, man. Like, I wonder if we could start a little game or something between us just to work through this, because, like, I mean, I'm not as popular as you. Like, no one messages me.
I'm not even popular, honestly. I'm not.
But okay, like I think number one is setting expectations. So I've slowly been morphing into that kind of university professor mode of like, I don't reply. Unless an email is super urgent, I wait until I get prodded for it. Like, and I mean that sounds a bit negative, but like, there's some things I get onto straight away, you know, like obviously, but a lot of stuff it's like, yeah, it could sit, you know, it's not timely, it's not the daily news, you know, like I could come back to this in a week and it would still be fine, and I think that's gives me more time to actually consider and digest the content of the communication. But then also the messaging. So already, you know, I'm off Facebook and that. So it's like you get. I talk on Instagram sometimes, but most of the time it's Signal, which is like a select group of people anyway, and everyone knows it. So it's me. Like if I go AWOL, it's just the way it is, you know. And ultimately, like I will always reply to email. I think, you know, at least once a week or something, but I think just like slowing that down a little bit and not expecting the kind of instantaneous response, because it kind of keeps you in this mental state of like, oh, I'm always have to be ready to engage. But then there's no room. It's like talking to fill the space, right? There's no room to actually let people drift out and then let them drift back in. And like this friend I met yesterday, I was like, man, I haven't seen that guy. I haven't spoken to him in donkey's years, but we just had a little catch up, and it was beautiful. Like it was like the old days, and we were just present. You know, it wasn't like, oh, you know, just chatting. I don't know, man. I think there's something there we could explore.
Yeah. I think we all need to slow down on so much messaging and so much sort of like always being. Yeah, like you say, always being available, but also always checking our email inboxes. You know, like my dad has a set time of the day where he'll open up his email inbox, he'll flick through and reply to anything that needs to be replied to, and it will be this small window. And then if you know he doesn't get time in that day, then he'll put it over to tomorrow. But you know, as opposed to, you know, on the flip side, if you look at me, I'm just like always opening up my inbox, right? And I'm always seeing emails that I need to reply to. That creates this dread. But it's not just email. It's kind of like, you know, WhatsApp and Instagram Messenger and sort of Signal and stuff. But there are places where I understand that I need to put my attention now. And there are places where I can sort of just, like you say, let it drift away for a little bit, and then it can come back.
I think I think we're onto something here, man. Maybe this whole nostalgia conversation is a way to just activate this. But what you said about having a time, and I think this is Fernando talked about this as well, right? Having like email, it's like it's a unit of work, right? Or Twitter it's a unit of work, and you just get it done. But how about? Because I think there's something about this the spontaneous nature of being able to just go and see somebody and go and engage with them in a way that isn't mediated through a device. And so what I mean by that is, like, I have this Kiki actually from, and soon you'll all meet Kiki from Fantasy City. But I mean, she's a real person, and I know her, and she works at a bubble tea place here in Wellington, and I just go and see her sometimes, and I just walk in, and I know she's there. I know when she works, and we chat about her music and what she's doing, and it's like I can just turn up, and it's not mediated through, what are you up to? Like, it's just like I go there and do it, and I think that's kind of what I'm getting at with, just turning up. And it can be a bit shocking for someone, but I think as an artist, it's kind of acceptable to be a bit eccentric. You know what I mean? It's like, same with my grandma. I don't say to my grandma, "Hey, I'm coming tomorrow. Are you guys going to be fresh?" No, I literally just turn up and let myself in, like, and start eating the biscuits. But the best biscuits are grandma's biscuits. But heavy use of butter. But you know what I'm talking about. But like, there's no like negotiation. Like, it's like a handshake. Like, oh, is it okay? Like, and so I think that's one thing. And then the messaging, it's like, it's at the very most, it should only ever be for organizing to meet. Like, it's like a logistical tool, but we use it now to share so much. And especially when we're also broadcasting like live streams and like kind of like the snippets of like, here I am, and it's kind of like a call for help, like, like the selfie, all of that stuff, which I was like, oh, it's never been. So I do it if I have to, but I don't want to. Yeah, man. What do you think? Sorry, I'm just bullshitting.
I love that. But I think we need to set, what would be really healthy is if I set myself a time where I could only check my emails at this time. And then also set a time for I can reply to messages from people at this time. And, I sort of wrestle with this idea quite a lot, because I think to myself, why am I regimenting my life like that? Why should I put my tasks into these sort of like time periods? It sort of feels very robotic and sort of cold. But the opposite, I mean, if I don't do that, then I just end up, just checking all the time.
No, so here's the idea, because like, for example, I set a time, Saturday morning is like my cleaning time, right? It's like I go and clean the house and that, and I do it and then it's done. Yeah. But every other time, like other moments, it's like you don't want to have them being corrupted by this other kind of, I mean, it's just a task. It's not contributing to your life's work. And in fact, if someone could just do it for me, it'd be great. I don't want to do email. I want to be just exploring and doing, the kind of, and maybe that's where people, that kind of that life-changing period, right, where you're starting to become more of an adult and things are more organized. Maybe that's what they're talking about, where the spontaneous stuff kind of stops being practical, and you're sort of all organized, but everything is all organized and regimented, and it's all planned out, and it's got to be right, and it has to be a good idea. which is kind of the opposite of youth, right? Where it's like the stupidest idea is the best idea, the funnest idea is the best idea, and who gives a shit as long as you just at least make it. The ends justify the means. Just do it, like all of these kind of different approaches. And yeah, man, you got me thinking. Maybe we need to create a manifesto, a guideline.
Yeah,
a little document. This is how to do
yeah,
it.
like 12K, like
yes.
Taylor's.
And the best work is going to emerge from those moments where you're actually just here you are. And one of my favorite things is it's kind of from classical literature, but it's called in media res, which is like the way that stories, or a lot of literature, ancient and modern, just kind of start. It's like in the middle of the story is what it means in Latin. So it's like, old stories are kind of like, well, in the beginning, but actually, I don't know, like Norwegian Wood or something. Like it starts. He's in the airport. Boom. Like he's just you jump straight into it. And I think, what am I trying to say? Like, if you're in you think of what you're doing on a daily basis. You're like, here I am. If this was like the opening chapter to a novel, I sat there in the office. My friend Simon had just signed off from, we were just having a catch up. I looked out the window, like what am I doing right now? If you were narrating that, and then just living that, like, because even the most banal things can be quite pleasurable, like I'm in a cafe just watching the people drift by, wondering about the old me and the old country, like reminiscing, and I mean it's like the Murakami treatment, right? Like nostalgic for your older self.
I love how you automatically straight away go for reminiscing or nostalgia. When you start telling a story, you're just like, I'm sitting in a cafe watching the people go by, and then you're immediately into nostalgia. I love it.
Yeah, so I got here. I mean, the other day I went to a cafe just up the road. I was like, I love just sitting in a cafe and vibing. Like literally. And it's just like, it doesn't need to be expensive or complicated. Like the maximum cost should be like the cost of a cup of coffee, which is going up because of inflation. But like still, it's not this massive thing. It doesn't have to be expensive.
It doesn't have to be.
And you can do that. And so like my favorite thing, like listing my favorite things in the world. Like one of them would be just sitting in a convenience store anywhere in the world and just drinking like the cheap coffee in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? Like I would do that. I would take that any day of the week, and just, you name a country, you name a city, anywhere in the universe, and I'll be there on the steps of that convenience store drinking like the $2 coffee, watching the cars go by, and that's like I'm done. Like that's it. That's my creative life right there. And maybe I'll take a photo as well, but anything more than that is pure luxury.
I love it. Well, let me just I quickly finished with the little experience that I had yesterday. Quite an interesting experience. So I went to buy this instrument from a guy on like eBay for musical instruments. This is it's just a little sort of like button pad where you can control and sort of create patches to make beautiful sounds and gorgeous stuff. Anyway, I went to his house to pick it up, and I went into his house, and he lived in like a basement flat, which is really quite nice here in England. There's something quite magical about basement flats. They're a little bit sort of like cave-like. Wow, the internet really isn't being my friend today, is it?
That's all right, man. You should finish your story, and we can just do a nice little cut just to...
Yeah, I will cut it in.
Sorry, you're talking about... Oh.
So I go into a studio, and there's synthesizers everywhere, instruments and synthesizers everywhere. But in the corner, by the window, there is a giant gong, like massive, like maybe 32 inches or I don't even know, 40 inches maybe, this giant gong hanging on a stand. And anyway, we ignore the gong, we ignore the elephant in the room, and I don't mention it. And we start playing with his, like, the other instruments and the one that I'm buying, just to make sure that it works and check everything's okay. And we start, like, having a little jam, and it's great, like all is going well. And then suddenly he says, "Let me play gong for you." Right, you can record it. You can record it for, like, for your sample packs or something like that. I was like, that's really interesting. I thought gongs just made, like, one noise, right? Like you smash it with the mallet, and then it's just like
there's the rum and everything, man. It's just a whole thing, right? Yeah.
But I had my mind blown yesterday, man. Like, seriously, had like a spiritual experience. So basically he said, "Yeah, let me play gong for you." So he sat down in front of the gong, and immediately, like, his sort of demeanor changed, and he got really, like, into it. He got, like, really in the zone, and he sort of, like, sat really, like, straight up, like, really rigid, like he was meditating or something. You know, his back was really straight. He was meditating. And he had all of these beaters laying in front of him, all of these mallets. Like, there was, like, giant, soft, big mallets, and then there was these small kind of rubber mallets that looked a bit like lollipops. There's all these mallets in front of him. And I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. He picked up one of the like medium-sized mallets and started rubbing it down the front of the gong, and there was no noise at all. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. What's going on here? And he rubbed it about 3 times, and then on the 4th time, this just beautiful, clear, ringing noise just rang out into the room and just filled the whole room with gorgeous noise. And my body started, like, vibrating in like tandem with this gong. And then he was using other mallets and sort of, like, going around the circumference of the gong, and he was going across it, and he had these funny little ones that looked like the letter E, and it was made of rubber, and then it was a very high pitched noise, and then he would hit it with the soft the soft one. Man, an out of body experience, like an out of this world experience. I never thought a gong could make so many noises. Absolutely gorgeous. Really had an amazing time. It affected me quite deeply, and I was like, I could have stayed there and listened to it for an hour. But honestly, if you can find in New Zealand, they do something called a gong bath, where you go into this room with I guess a musician, and they play the gong for you, but you lie down on the floor, and you sort of, like, they switch the lights off, and it's like a real experience. You sit down and really chill out, and they play gong for you. Man,
resonance cascade. It sounds like it wasn't just a commercial transaction. It sounds like you made a friend as well.
I made a good friend. Yeah, I really
That's great,
did.
Man. Well, hey, thank you for sharing that story. I've enjoyed talking to you today as well. It's good to just catch up as always. And yeah, I look forward to talking again soon.
Yeah, take care. See you soon.